Have you ever been reading something and your brain just fills in a word that isn't actually there? Or maybe you've stared at a blank page, just struggling to get your thoughts out. Well, today we're going to dive into the really surprising science of how our brains manage to pull off these incredible feats of reading and writing.
All right, let's kick things off with a little challenge. I want you to read the following passage at your usual speed. Ready?
Okay, here it is. Go ahead and give it a quick read.
So, did you catch it? Don't worry if you didn't. A lot of people miss it the first time through. Let's take another look, and this time, really think about what your brain is doing while you read.
So, if you read horse instead of house, guess what? Your brain is working perfectly. It's not a mistake. It's actually the sign of a highly efficient brain. See, you weren't just decoding letters one by one. You were using the context of the story to predict what should come next. And hey, this is exactly why it's so hard to proofread your own work, right? Your brain already knows what you meant to say, so it helpfully corrects it for you.
So how in the world does our brain pull off this little magic trick? How does it see the word house but tell you it's horse? Well, it's all thanks to two incredibly powerful systems or engines working together.
Our first engine is called bottom-up processing. You can think of this as the code breaker. It looks at the letters C-A-T and translates them into sounds. Pretty straightforward. But then we have the second engine, top-down processing. This is the detective. It uses everything you already know, like for instance that knights ride horses, not houses, to make smart guesses and speed the whole process up.
And this is a perfect example of what happens when one of those engines conks out. Your codebreaker can process every single word here, no problem. But without your detective brain kicking in to provide context, well, it's pretty much meaningless, isn't it? Just a jumble of jargon.
So we've got a handle on the mechanics of how we read. But how do we learn to do this in the first place? You might be surprised to find out that it doesn't actually begin with our eyes at all.
The absolute bedrock of reading isn't visual. It's all about what you can hear. This skill is called phonemic awareness. It just means that before we can ever learn to read a word, we have to first be able to hear and identify the individual sounds, or phonemes, that make it up.
And we build this skill by playing what are basically simple sound games. Things like isolating the first sound in a word, figuring out which words rhyme, and eventually being able to break a whole word down into its little sound pieces.
Think about the word cat. Phonemic awareness has nothing to do with knowing the letters C, A, and T. It's all about hearing three distinct sounds, k, a, t. Once a child can hear and separate those sounds, that's when they're ready to make that huge connection to the letters on the page.
Okay, so that foundation in hearing is the key to decoding language. But what about the other way around? How do our brains learn to encode it? This brings us to the related but very different skill of writing.
Reading eventually becomes almost second nature, kind of like floating down a river. But writing is more like building a bridge. It's a deliberate, conscious act of construction. It takes planning, effort, and very careful assembly.
I mean, just think about the difference in brain power it takes to compose a formal email versus just firing off a quick text. One is this carefully built message for someone who isn't there with you. The other is a fast, informal back and forth.
See, formal writing is a different beast entirely because it's meant to be permanent and stand on its own. It's planned and rewritten and checked for errors because the person reading it can't just ask you for clarification. And that's exactly why we have to go to school to deliberately learn all its rules and conventions.
Okay, so if writing well is this complicated skill we have to learn, what's the secret to actually getting good at it? Well, I'll give you a hint. It has absolutely nothing to do with getting it perfect on the first try.
The solution is something called process writing, and it's a real game changer. It reframes writing from being this single high-stakes event into a continuous cycle of just getting better.
And this is the writer's loop. It's so simple. You draft something, you get feedback on it, and then you rewrite it. The whole thing is built on this one simple but incredibly powerful idea. Good writing is rewriting.
Now, for this loop to really work, the feedback has to be useful. And I don't just mean someone finding your typos. Good feedback is more like a conversation. It focuses on the big picture stuff, like your ideas and how they're organized. It's meant to help and encourage you, not just to judge you.
So when you boil it all down, our brains read by predicting and write by constructing. At the end of the day, both are just a search for meaning. So here's a final thought. What if we started treating them that way? What if reading wasn't just about consuming information and writing wasn't some big final test,
but both were simply the start of a conversation.